Welcome to another episode of Stop Doing Stupid Stuff, where hosts Tim Keefe and Andreas Wieman tackle the workplace disasters that are probably happening at your company right now. Today, they're diving into a game-changing article from Entrepreneur magazine by LaQuita Cleare titled, "Here's the Real Reason Your Employees Are Checked Out and the Missing Link That Could Fix It." With a jaw-dropping 21% employee engagement rate globally, something's clearly broken. Tim and Andreas reveal why your fancy onboarding process and weekly all-hands emails are falling flat, and how the simple power of storytelling could completely transform your workplace. From turning employees into comic book heroes to CEO starring mini-movies, get ready for some seriously unconventional and effective ways to actually connect with your team.
Hi, everybody. This is Tim Keefe, and welcome back to another Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast with my co-conspirator, sometimes cellmate, Mr. Andreas Wieman. So, Andreas, what are we talking about this week?
Yeah, a really good article that you're probably going to hear that we're, I don't know, kind of sort of passionate about. It's out of
I have no
Entrepreneur.
passion in my life whatsoever. I'm just cold and dark and never mind. Go ahead.
That's pretty accurate. You put on a good voice for the podcast. I appreciate that. And then you
That's all
sleek
good.
back into being Voldemort afterwards. All right. So there's a good article in Entrepreneur that we'll link to in the podcast here called "Here's the Real Reason Your Employees Are Checked Out and the Missing Link That Could Fix It." I love articles that present the problem and they're like, well, here's what you can do to to stop doing stupid stuff, right? Which what we're going to talk about here. But it's a really good article by LaQuita Cleare that we'll also link to some of her prior podcasts and works too that I think are really good. But it really hits on what I would say in the modern age, how do you communicate better with your employees? We always talk about how there's this huge lack of disengagement, right? The global Gallup study says what is 21% global engagement. That is terrible. And everyone's like sitting around completely mystified of, oh my God, they're so, this is my sarcastic voice, if you
I
guys,
got it.
the
Yeah, I
listeners
heard
can
it
tell.
before.
Like, oh my gosh, there's such disengagement. Productivity is falling off a cliff. We have no idea why. You're like, well, they're disengaged. They don't care. They're showing up. They're badging in, right? Or they're clocking in virtually, but they're kind of like meh. Like how much can I do? What's the minimal effort I can put forth to not get fired while I'm applying for a whole bunch of other jobs that hopefully don't do what I'm experiencing right now. And so I think there's a what I would call a quick kind of win scenario with being able to help develop your employees and drive engagement really quickly. And it's storytelling, which is what the article's about. So before I give away the whole the whole article, Tim, let me turn it over to you to see if you have any comments.
Oh, no, I mean, I think it's right on. And I do think that it's funny that the way the article it's laid out is really well done. And, you think about when and how do we do storytelling in these particular settings, right? And it's kind of interesting because you'll go over the years how it's changed. I mean, it used to be very verbal because, getting things written even was, kind of a pain. And then, of course, writing became really easy. Anybody could do it. And boom, now we just bury people in documentation. But, when I think about the life cycle of an employee, you go through this period of time where you're being, wooed, for lack of a better term, right? You're great. We love you. We really want you. Come on, take our offer, take our offer. and for a minute, you matter, right? And then the minute you say yes and you sign the letter, it's like, oh, they're gone. They moved on
They're
to
like in
the
the back room. The recruiters
what
are like, "Oh, we got them. That's it. Now let's go on to the next
yeah,
person. We got them. They're stuck with us."
right. And suddenly, you're kind of left alone. And then suddenly a new person shows up and says, "Hi, I'm here to onboard you. I'm your AI bot now," or even a chat bot, or even when the company you and I worked at together, they were doing that automated onboarding, 10 years ago now. And you can imagine how good that was. And most of it was, hey, go to this website, log in, here's your new employee ID number, and just go through a checklist. And it was a huge checklist, right? Mostly you got to work through these PowerPoint presentations of, our six organizational culture statements are these.
Yeah. Like
We don't know
Tim,
why they are,
Tim,
but these are what.
I need you to pay attention while I read off of this PowerPoint so you understand how our culture works, okay? If you're not quiet and attentive, you're not going to understand the culture. So please just let
That's
me
right.
read off this PowerPoint.
And don't take a nap while the PowerPoint is running. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then of course there's the whole like getting engaged with your supervisor, which I mean, uh, sometimes that takes weeks before that supervisor even gives you the time of day because they're buried.
Think about now though, it's even better now because you really middle managers are kind of getting gutted for quote unquote cost savings. Doing my air finger quotes cost savings. So now you have someone who's even further removed from like what would be a new hire frontline employee who's supposed to be their supervisor slash manager. So imagine how what we're talking about, what you eloquently just described. Imagine the transition and onboarding that occurs between someone that's even up a higher level, probably has more responsibility too, and not training and tools that they need. I mean, to me, if I just step back and look at it as a math equation, I usually say, like the variables are against you to figure this out.
Yep.
And but no one's raising their hand saying, "Oh, why don't we try it this way?" Or maybe they're disincentivized because the communication breakdown is so bad, which is what we're talking about and kind of what the article hits on. Like, how do we figure that out? How do you quick
Well,
win that? And this is where I think the article does a good job of giving you guys, like they point out the problem exactly like you're articulating right now and pointing out the problem, but what do you do about it?
and I think to your point, this is like really an interesting piece because you've spent all this money, to recruit this person, to hire them. You may even have, now they're on board, and there's almost like this expectation of instant competency to their job. And yet, to your point, we have bigger spans of control, so there's less attention from the direct supervisor or skip level manager or whatever it might be. Now, of course, everybody's waving the magic, oh, Gen AI or Gen AI tools or RAG tools are going to step in and help onboard this person. And I'm not saying that that might not be good, but it's got to be personalized and it's got to be a story that engages that person. Because if it's just a bunch of checklist items that are like, and the
Well,
article calls it out, LaQuita does a great job of saying like, filling somebody with pages and pages of like, this is our culture, but why is it our culture? And why, how did we get
exactly.
here? And why is this the culture we want to enforce? And by the way, I'm going to tell you for a fact that most companies, there's the culture that's on the wall, and then there's the real culture.
Yep.
How often I remember being, I won't name the company, but I remember being in a annual meeting, big town hall, right? This is the big launch for every year, sales kickoff. And they got the company culture or the company values hanging on big banners from the ceiling. And you watched the executive teams in this particular case violate every single one of those in the course of an hour. Okay, so what are you telling me? Right.
Yeah.
So there's the stuff that's on the wall, and then there's the stuff that you really do. And then, but I think here what we want to do is say, okay, Tim or Andreas, we want you to be part of our culture. First off, hopefully you've, that's one of the reasons you accepted the job. And this is a big deal, I think, particularly, with the
For the
millennials
new
and Gen,
generations.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's absolutely critical. I was in a dinner conversation, or talking to some people just the other day, and we are on this thing like, oh yeah, my generation was all about money. Like if somebody offered me $50, to scrub out the inside of the cylinders on a diesel engine, I mean, there's a big diesel. You had to climb into the cylinder, for $3 an hour. I was like, I'm all in, man. $3 an hour. Now, of course, it's like when I, speak to my daughters, it's like, no, but it's who I work with. Actually, more often than not, the who I work with, my team, the people I engage with, but also I want to feel like what I'm doing matters. And and that's a big part of it. And we see like mission statements and even now, of course, now the best part is everybody goes to Gen AI and says, write me a mission statement. Um,
Yeah, and it
but
sounds very vanilla. But I
well,
think what you said is really important though, Tim. It's like the boardroom gets together or the company executives get to go together and they theoretically or from an academic viewpoint say this makes sense. Let's go give this to our teams without consulting their teams, by the way, right? It's like, let's say you're in a 10,000 people company and you've got 20 people in a room. We're like, oh, this is it. This is our values. This is what we're going to go put out. There's no collaboration. There's no engagement. I'm going to keep coming back to this word engagement because I think it's like the engagement is what drives the culture. So you have these people who push out theoretically what this could be, right? Which is your comment around the company values hanging from the ceiling and banners on the walls and these, great pieces of collateral that you just kind of shove down everybody's throat, say, yeah, you got to do this. That's not driving engagement. That's why we see the poor engagement numbers. And if you peel that back, that's why you see low productivity. That's why you see job hopping and quiet quitting and whatever the new term is for quiet quitting, this week. But there's no, and the other thing that you said is checklists. I think this is critically important. Are there certain steps that need to be taken from a QA perspective or regulatory perspective? Absolutely. But you got to figure out how those items get done in the course of the work without stifling people's autonomy and independent applied logic and thinking. That also drives engagement because then if they have a question, they feel like they can ask a question, which should be promoted in your culture, then they can engage with each other or with their supervisors, right? But when you give them a checklist and everything is on a checklist, then guess what? You're removing engagement. You're hindering your engagement delivering ability because just shut up and do the checklist, stupid. That's what it turns into. I mean, not exactly delivered like that, but that's kind of where it goes to. So what we got to do is figure out how do we drive engagement that is also going to hit some of these other attributes that we're talking about around productivity, around
Yeah.
passion. Because when people are passionate, then they focus more and they give you a little bit more from a productivity
Yeah.
perspective. So the whole article kind of centers around the power of storytelling. That's where I think, and we kind of did a long tee up there. Hopefully everybody's still listening, but it's really storytelling. So if you
Oh,
think the marketing goes to, oh, you got to be personalized. If you can personalize something for a person, they have the tendency, the probability to purchase your product. Yet we don't apply that same logic to employees. Like if we personalize it for this employee, they're going to be more vested, they're going to be more interested and
yeah.
engaged in the outcome that they provide,
Well,
which also helps the customer experience, by the way, right? So how do we do that from a storytelling perspective? Because then also to storytelling, whether you're doing it with words or you're doing it with a mix of words and visuals, it's going to resonate with people and they're going to see themselves in the scenario you're presenting
yeah.
and they're going to get vested in it. They're going to get passionate about it.
Well, I think that ability to see yourself in it is really something that gets lost, right? And I mean, I think about even when new employees join, that email that goes out that, says, "Welcome, Tim, glad to have you part of the XYZ team." And to the rest of the organization, Tim's here because he brings this type of background and expertise to us, and we're really excited, blah, blah, blah. That's a dopamine hit for Tim to see that he's called out. That's a human thing. So, but even worse now, nobody reads, right? Whether it's whatever email, memos, it doesn't read. So you have, and I think the storytelling thing is really interesting because I bet there's a lot of people. I say, what do you mean storytelling? We send out every week, I send out an email to everybody. Here's, what we're going to be working on or whatever. And the reality is nobody's reading it,
Yeah,
right?
well, hey, the memo was drafted by, HR and legal, so we know it's good. I'm like, well, yeah, that's the problem. They're gonna write it in HR and legally speak, and so the audience you're sending it to are your frontline workers in a factory or cleaning out diesel engines, like you said. So that's the point, is the storytelling. How can you reach out broader? So yeah, all of it is about adoption. How can you communicate effectively so the audience that is reading this or looking at it and visually processing it, how can you gain their adoption through comprehension? How does it make
Yep.
sense to them? That's what I think the key is, and that's why storytelling is so powerful.
And I think you got to pay attention to your audience. Who is your audience, and how do they consume,
Yep,
information?
agreed.
If it's through graphic novels, I mean, you kind of got to go, well, what are we doing around that? Do we have the ability and the capability to tell a story in pictures? Have we even thought about that? And this is something that we are trying to do more and more with our clients because our clients are holding up their hands and saying, hey, we're really interested in employee experience. We need to have our employees engaged. We need to have them really tied into our mission statement, assuming the mission statement really aligns with the business goals and objectives.
Hmm.
But And how do we make that personal for Tim to feel like he's really part of what we're doing? you know, I'll tee that one up for you, but about some of the things that we've been doing for clients and maybe just close out with that. But it's all about storytelling. And I think a lot of organizations do not know how to storytell. Even in
Well,
their marketing, they don't know how to storytell.
oh no, I'm with you 100%. And I would tell you, go check out our website, which we can link to as well, and you can look at one, maybe a little self-promotion here. We have a new book coming out in October that is Stop Doing Stupid Stuff, the Leadership Edition, which is co-authored. I'm not going to share everybody, but co-authored by five of us. It's pretty amazing. But we didn't write it in the first person view. Like Tim is one of the co-authors, obviously, along with myself. And we didn't write it from our point of view. We wrote it in a storytelling fashion. So it has resonation with people, in a broader sense. Go look at our website too with some of our other books, like Scorecard IQ, for example. We don't try to tell people, here's what you got to do, and it's a very linear kind of read through. It's immersed in storytelling and examples that resonate with a broader audience. And that's where I think on the writing side, and I said words, right? I think that's the way to go. But then if you talk about the visual side, especially with the younger generations now, they're used to seeing visual representations that I'm going to get a little nerdy here in psychology, but they resonate cognitively more with, if you think about memes or you think about emojis, right? They have a stronger resonation when they see an emoji. The feelings, whether it's a red mad face, frustrated face, or a green happy face, that resonates with younger generations better than it will with you and I, Tim, right? Because that's what the visual representation that they've had, I would say, during COVID and coming out of post-COVID and virtualization and electronic communication, it resonates more visually. It's less cognitive load and processing, and they comprehends more. So first, some people are probably going to be listening to what we're saying. They're going to be like, Tim, we cannot do a graphic novel for our employees. We can't do this. We can't do this. Here's what I would tell you. Not only can you do it, we're doing it today for our clients. If you go look at some of our material with our clients where we're creating personalized videos where the CEO of the company we're working with is the main character in the video clip that we're producing for them. And look at the storytelling that's engaged there. It's very catchy, like you're almost watching a 30-second movie, but the concepts that are getting conveyed and the message that's getting delivered is so powerful. And that
Yep.
has a lot to do with the words behind it and the brainstorming, the storyboarding, etc. But even if you look at our tool BalanceWise IQ, our employee engagement tool, we're creating comic strip characters out of people that actually use the tool. And we're promoting obviously more adoption for tool usage, volunteer tool usage with BalanceWise IQ and their weekly pulse checks, but we're turning them into comic strip characters.
Yep.
There's a sense of
Yep.
pride behind that. And again, it all goes back to that word I was saying earlier, engagement. So all of that I think really important and it's doable. We're not throwing out a theoretical
No,
approach saying, hey, if you do this, we're actually doing this in practice right now and seeing great results from it.
when you think about the energy and effort that goes into a memo, that goes to legal and everything else versus nobody reads it, to what we're talking about, which is pretty much no less, no more effort and is incredibly powerful and absorbed in seconds and sticks. So to,
Yeah.
Laquita's point, storytelling matters. Storytelling is more powerful. And I would say to any organization, private, public, or a public organization, a private company, or a nonprofit, an NGO, you've got to be able to engage with your staff, whether volunteers, employees. And if you're not doing it or you're not paying attention to it and thinking you're doing it now, you got to ask. So are you doing it? Do your people feel engaged? Number one, that's great. And are you asking them, how can you communicate with them more effectively? I don't think companies are doing that. It's still a one-way thing. They still sit there and go, well, it's always been this way, so this is what we do. And you're like, you got a different audience with different backgrounds and different perceptions. And by the way, it's a different world out there if you're not reading the papers. Oh, God forbid I just dated myself who actually reads the paper. But anyway,
Well, no, I mean, you're not seeing it in their numbers though. Like you're
right.
seeing disengagement increase, you're seeing
Yep.
employee turnover, attrition, productivity. You're seeing it in all of the,
Yep. Yep.
objectively measured numbers there. So I think it's a 100% accurate statement.
So with that, I think the key thing here is if storytelling is scary, if storytelling is a challenge for you, we'd love to talk more about it. For those of you who find this interesting, or hopefully you found it interesting, please hit the like and subscribe. We'd love to hear more from you. We're enjoying doing this. I don't know if you're enjoying listening, but we're enjoying doing it, so we're not leaving. And we'll be here again. So with that, thanks again, Andreas. Anything you want to close with?
No, just props to LaQuita for the amazing article and bringing attention back to something obviously that we're passionate about too. It's great to see others that are passionate about this because I think it's a powerful device to help people, and we're kind of here to figure out how can we help more people. So appreciate the conversation, Tim. We will sync up again on the next podcast, and please stop doing stupid stuff.
Yes, that's a good one. Take care, everybody.
Take care.